Alright, everybody. I have been getting a lot of requests to talk about this topic, and my god, do I have a lot to say about it, to be honest. And I'm glad you guys think that this is interesting enough for you guys to want me to discuss it, and you guys are interested in my opinion on it. But let me give you guys a little background, right? Most people watching this video, they'll already know the title, so they know what I'm talking about going in. But I want to say 13 or 14 years ago now, I was at home, I was a kid, and I was watching I think it was either the Science Channel or the Discovery Channel, either one of those two. And there was a documentary that came on that had my eyes glued to the TV. It had my undivided attention from beginning to end. And during the commercials, I was like, get back to it, come on, I need to see what happens next, I need to know more. And this documentary was about a team of scientists operating mostly out of, like, Siberia, who are trying to take advantage of melting permafrost, unveiling substantial amounts of well-preserved mammoth tissue. They were going to try to use that tissue to clone a woolly mammoth back into existence, to de-extinct it, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, hold on. Yeah, like we've found some really surprisingly well-preserved mammoths, and a decent amount of, like, material that's, like, continuously getting to be more and more. Here's one of the most famous, right? The more that we see, you know, the permafrost melting, which is a negative thing, the higher chance that we have of maybe one of them gets discovered that was preserved in the right circumstances, that maybe we could get some usable DNA from it. And the theory was that if they can find any amount of usable mammoth DNA, theoretically they could just fill in the gaps as best they can. Maybe using AI, they could do so. I don't know how they explained it exactly, because it's been well over a decade. But they essentially said that they wanted to create a cell that contained woolly mammoth DNA, or as close to it as they could get. That's the goal. And then to use stem cells in some way to create woolly mammoth sperm cells that could then be, and this is, I imagine, what their plan still is if they ever do this for woolly mammoths, to use the woolly mammoth sperm cell to artificially inseminate an Indian elephant. Apparently shares the most DNA with woolly mammoths as far as modern day animals go, or at least modern day elephants go, and have that female Indian elephant carry this potential future woolly mammoth baby to term. It would take apparently like 3 years or something too, because of the gestation that elephants do. It's like years of gestation, or like a year, 2 years or something. But ideally, we would end up with a woolly mammoth. And when I was a kid, obviously, big Jurassic Park fan, this had me so hyped. And I've been continually, year by year, disappointed to see we haven't done this yet. We haven't done this yet. There are apparently also, like, indigenous people in Siberia that say they have mammoth meat they've found from, like, melting permafrost in their their big, like, freezers, and they've, like, shown them off before, but there's like big sea animals that those could have been the bones and flesh of, you know? Like, yeah, they had the flesh and bones of a big animal, but it looked kind of fresh to be, like, thousands-year-old woolly mammoth flesh, you know? So, like, a lot of people doubt those stories, but it's possible. It's definitely possible. And so, with that being something that I've been actively looking forward to, and I've genuinely felt we're right on the, like, that's on the horizon, when I heard that a company had managed to successfully de-extinct dire wolves, a species of wolf native to North America, if I'm not mistaken, that went extinct about 10,000 years ago. I was like, we finally did it? I thought it was going to be mammoths, but I guess they opted for dire wolves? I thought it was the same company, frankly. I didn't know there were multiple people trying to do this. And so I was kind of on the hype train, like, holy shit, they basically made dire wolves. But, and I did have somebody in the Discord that was actually like, apparently just making it their mission to tell everybody, these are not real dire wolves. And I was like, okay, but, like, let people have fun. This can't really be that serious, right? Right? I was wrong. I was wrong. And I will get to why I was wrong soon. It turns out, not understanding that these are not dire wolves and that this is not true de-extinction, and in fact that de-extinction is in and of itself, at least the way that they're trying to apply it, kind of a nothing science. Or I shouldn't say a nothing science. It's kind of a pointless endeavor. Oh my gosh, I cannot get the eyelashes out of my eyes today. It goes even further than that. Thankfully, we've got the GOAT, Hank Green, the ultimate science education YouTuber, who came out with a video that just kind of breaks down the situation, explaining that they did not in fact make dire wolves, and that they made something else entirely different. Now, I'm only going to play a little bit of this video here. I'm going to speed it up a bit, because I want to get you guys the gist of it here. Now, my understanding is basically that they took DNA from existing, like, gray wolves, tweaked it, like, I want to say, like, in 14 or 20 places, maybe, like, not even that much, and then basically tweaked the DNA so that these gray wolves would exhibit features that are very similar to dire wolves as far as we know. Mind you, these things went extinct a long time ago. Are very similar to dire wolves as far as we know, and could theoretically fill the niche in the environment that they left, fill the vacuum they left. But they aren't dire wolves. Like, they are not it's not just that they aren't technically dire wolves, they just aren't dire wolves, right? Like, they are no more dire wolves than a Pomeranian painted to look like a panda in a zoo is a panda. And yes, China did do that once, I think. So, yeah, they may look, walk, talk, and be as cute as dire wolves or whatever, but they are not dire wolves. In the same way that Pomeranians spray painted black and white are not pandas. It's a scientific fact.
Dire wolves are back, or are
Hello,
they?
Voltic.
There's a biotechnology company called Colossal that is attempting to de-extinct various animals, and they have just claimed that they have de-extincted their first animal, not just their first animal, the first animal to ever be de-extincted. And that claim does not, in my opinion, hold up to scrutiny. However, there are a number of truly remarkable things that are part of this announcement that allow me to still be excited about it, despite the fact that I think they're saying some stuff that they shouldn't say. So this video is...
He's gonna get into it a little... Oh, the video's quiet? My bad. He's a little afraid to get into it because I feel like he tries to avoid being like a drama stirrer. He's not like a call-out guy. But there's some things about this company that kind of give me like sus vibes. Hard to put into words, but like certain things they say, certain messaging, certain connections they have just put me on edge a little bit. And I'll elaborate further once we've got more context.
The good, the bad, and the straight up wrong of this announcement. And the realization that we are all going to come to in the end here is that what was done is in some ways more remarkable, but also almost certainly more scary than de-extinction. Because if you could say that a species was created here, it is a species that has never existed before. This is not bringing a species back. This is the wholesale creation of a new species by humans, of large mammal. And that is indeed new. But there's so much here that I feel like the way to get through it all is to just watch the video that announced this, and I'm going to react to little pieces of it.
Like, to be clear, this tech is super impressive. It's super cool. But it's not cloning, and it's not de-extinction, it's gene editing. a tech that we've had for a while now that has been blowing people away for a while now. Like since I was a kid, people have been talking about how cool CRISPR research is. And it's only been getting crazier with the headlines coming out about what's possible with it. But it's basically, so correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this was successfully done. Computer software can interface with DNA code, right? Like this is like it can read that. And like software can interface with that. And I'm pretty certain there was like a whole ass like Metal Gear Solid plot inspired experiment where they successfully got a software to store or to activate upon certain DNA being put through like a reader. Like it was basically like a DNA passcode reader, essentially. And the idea was that theoretically with that, like if computers can recognize DNA and use it to activate a software on a computer, could you do it the other way around? Like there's crazy ass research they're doing in that realm as well. DNA is super interesting, but it's also surprisingly rigid, I guess is a weird way of putting it. It's like it does what it does. If you change a thing about DNA or about a genetic code of DNA and you get an outcome, you will always get that outcome, more or less, right? Like, it's very predictable. We can go in, change a certain set of genes, and almost guarantee a certain result, right? We can even do it to a living subject, I believe. I think there have been cases where, like, people's genes have been changed while they're alive. Like, their DNA has been altered while they're alive by man-made intervention, which is crazy to me. But this tech is wild, and it's very different tech than the kind of stuff that, like, Jurassic Park does. Well, it's not very different, but it's different tech than the kind of, like, Jurassic Park-style stuff that people are thinking of, but it's still super impressive. It's way more close... This is way closer to, like, curing cancer than it is to bringing back dinosaurs, if that makes sense. Like, this realm of science is going to get us a cure to all cancer before it brings T-Rexes into our timeline. You know, like there's not, that's more the realm that this research inhabits.
Bit by bit.
Everyone likes to talk about the climate crisis, but we are actually in a biodiversity crisis.
So I don't know that everybody does like to talk about the climate crisis, but I do think that it is right to say that we are in these twin crises of biodiversity crisis and the climate crisis that, of course, intersect with each other. The climate crisis has huge impacts on biodiversity, but I think a lot of people might think that it's the biggest factor in it, and it's not. The biggest factor in the biodiversity crisis, human use of habitat, basically. So, like, encroachment on habitat, poaching, that kind of stuff.
This is one of the things that does kind of suss me out about the company. They message in this way where it's like, we're trying to save the world. And so we're tackling this hyper-specific thing, a biodiversity crisis, an issue that we think is the most severe problem because it's what our company deals in. And also our first thing, our main thing we're going to do is we're going to, quote-unquote, bring back a species that has been extinct for so long. Reintroducing it into the wild would destroy the ecosystem you introduced it in, more likely than not. And on top of that, they're not even going to release them into the wild. They're going to be living basically in their own little private Jurassic Park. Like a paddock that's wolf heaven for the rest of their lives, where they're fed constantly and have plenty of care, and they'll be perfectly happy. But, like, there aren't going to be dire wolves in the wild now, helping to fill in a vacuum in the ecosystem, which is a good thing. Like, we are so close. The things we have around today can easily be saved. I don't really see the reason to necessarily see a company whose whole thing is bringing back the extinct species as something super valuable right now. Like, we're on the edge of full ecological collapse, and we're like, we need to start bringing back species as their environments are less stable than ever, and environmental instability is what extincts like half of these species. It's like, what is the point to bring them back if not just to put them in a zoo, right? Just like these quote-unquote dire wolves are in, right? Like, it's fun. I'm not going to like put down the excitement of this whole thing, but it's like the company is definitely doing this whole like Mr. Beast philanthropist vibe of like, we're helping people, when it's like, no, you're here to make us be hyped about bringing back prehistoric animals. Come on, just can you be honest in the pitch?
Is this the right way to take on the biodiversity crisis? Is the problem that no one is de-extincting animals? No. Like, I don't think that this guy would say that the problem is no one is de-extincting animals. The problem is that humans continue to encroach on more and more habitat every year. We're doing it slower than we used to, especially per capita.
Like, we have no business bringing back extinct animals until we stop destroying the Amazon rainforest. Like, right there, that, like the more that I've learned about the Amazon rainforest, the more, like, hyper interested in its protection I've become. It really is, like, the most nature place on Earth. Like, it is just distilled nature on steroids, the Amazon forest. And it is so much bigger than you think. It's bigger than, like, it's basically the size of the American Midwest. Like, the American, like, West, quote-unquote. Like, the like, flat, flyover farmer states. Like, basically all that land makes up the size of the Amazon rainforest in total. It's fucking huge, dude. And it's dense jungle full of wildlife and like, indigenous peoples and stuff like that. And we are destroying it globally. There's a global effort to destroy it from many different angles and institutions and individuals. And meanwhile, we're having conversations about bringing back extinct species that don't even have an ecosystem to go back to. And we're continuing to destroy ecosystems and extinct species. And it's like maybe if we want to have like a Noah's Ark menagerie to start rewilding as soon as we start recovering the ecosystem, but it's like, we're so far from that. Trump is actively like, he has promised to destroy all climate agreements that we could possibly be involved in. Like, we're taking decades of steps back in progress in stopping climate change under Trump. The world is taking decades of steps back.
But we're still doing it.
Some scientists have estimated that by 2050, half of all species that are alive today will be extinct.
So 2050 is 25 years away.
That
I don't
is
know
not
that
true.
any scientists have made this claim. It would be really weird to
I haven't
me if
seen
they
this video
had,
yet.
But I'm going to Google
Is that
it.
true?
So here it is. Biologists think 50% of species will be facing extinction by the end of the century. Currently, 1 in 10 are facing extinction. So that's not extinct.
Okay.
That's in danger of becoming extinct.
That's still scary as fuck. 50% of species will be facing extinction by the end of 2020. Holy shit. That's... Yeah, facing is different, but that's insane. Like, facing extinction means, like, you don't really see them. You know, like, 50% of species around today are going to be so close, so threatened, you're not going to be seeing them. Something that I think a lot of people discount is, like, if you plan to have kids and you're Gen Z, such as myself, your kids are going to grow up in a world with so many fewer animals, bugs, birds, and just general wildlife out there. Like, when you and I were kids, we could go out and easily find just shitloads of bugs. They were everywhere, right? When our parents were kids, there were even more bugs. When their parents were kids, there were a lot more bugs. And bugs are really the telltale of, like, the ecological health of the world, really. And the consistent thing that you're always hearing is there's less bugs now than there was when I was a kid. And you've heard that generationally, going back, like, God, 5 or 6 generations, 8 generations at this point. And now we're getting to this, like, critical juncture now where I can't remember the last time I saw a butterfly. It might have been a year ago. And I've got a lot of flowers all throughout my garden. Like, there should be butterflies all around. They are far less numerous. When I was a kid, you could not... If you put out a milkweed plant, you were going to get like 5 or 6 monarch butterflies laying their eggs on the undersides of the leaves, They would hatch into monarch caterpillars. You could get handfuls of monarch caterpillars, and they would just, you would have to make sure you had a lot of milkweed plants for the monarch caterpillar eggs, or for the monarch caterpillars. They would eat all the leaves, they would turn into chrysalises, or they'd make their chrysalis, and then they would hatch into monarch butterflies. And I used to do this constantly. I would like watch them and monitor them and make sure they were okay and take care of them. And I used to do this a lot when I was a kid. You do not see that many butterflies anymore like when I was little. Holy shit, now that you mention it, I haven't seen butterflies in a long time either. Yep, they're one of the most threatened species of insect out there right now. Like, the butterflies are highly threatened right now. Like, they're worse off than the bees were at their worst point. Like, we're really close to most butterflies being extinct.
And I can believe that. And I could see how that stat could get translated in conversations to half of species alive today will be extinct by 2050. And please do not take this as me saying that this isn't a problem and we don't need to face it. Obviously, we need to face it. It's just a fact that I wanted to check because it seemed off to me, and indeed it is off, but like, whatever. Is this the world's first de-extinction? No. I don't see any reason why these animals would not be considered gray wolves. They are genetically modified gray wolves. If you would consider them a separate species, then you would have to consider them a synthetic species, and you would not consider them to be a species or even a relative, really, of dire wolves. But whatever.
People think it's a scary word, de-extinction. They immediately put us with Jurassic Park, and it's not.
In the circles I travel in, de-extinction isn't scary.
No, I don't think anyone is actually legitimately afraid of a Jurassic Park scenario. Most people see Jurassic Park, including kids, and they say, God, I wish this was real. Even in the context of the movies, every Jurassic Park scenario goes badly because a human intervenes and fucks things up. Even though, like for one, and it's usually like several people independently acting to sabotage, and it's a confluence of events you almost certainly couldn't predict that cause things to go wrong in all the Jurassic Park movies. So in real life, if you actually spared no expense and really put in the basic common sense standards to any zoo, much less one containing dinosaurs, we could absolutely do a Jurassic Park and never have a single fatality or injury. I think most people believe that that's totally doable. Real life is not a horror movie. All right? We keep massive grizzly and polar bears in zoos, and they don't break out and kill people. We could keep velociraptors contained, right? I think most people are not afraid of Jurassic Park. That feels like marketing mumbo jumbo to me from that company.
Because of Jurassic Park, it's scary because, like, we're trying to figure out how to do ecosystems, and the ecosystems are very flexible and mobile, and when something comes out of an ecosystem, that can cause problems, and trying to put it back in once it's been gone for a long time can also cause problems. I'm not actually personally opposed to the idea of de-extinction. I know lots of people who are, but I think that it's an active conversation that we're not going to have right now. But like, it's not because people think that like.
So, this technology, I don't like it being marketed as like this de-extinction tool, because you want to know what comes to mind for me as a really good use for it? Apparently this story is true. I've heard this a lot before. But apparently love bugs were genetically modified and created by like USF or something like that. This is a theory you hear a lot when you're a kid growing up in Florida. To be like mosquito-eating bugs. And they just ended up being useless, nuisance, windshield splattering little bastards, basically. And, they're annoying and everything, but that kind of reminds me of what this was meant to be, but I think that was just done through some kind of, like, breeding thing. They were meant to eat aphids, not mosquitoes? Ah, okay, Chroma. Well, regardless, they're kind of annoying, but I think the concept of that is actually really cool. To breed a new species of like, organism into existence and release it, assuming there are no negative effects, in order to handle an ecological problem. And so let's say here's a good example of how this tech could be used well. Let's say in Yellowstone National Park, all of the wolves die. Or, well, there are other wolves you could put in, but let's say, let's say some rare ground-dwelling bird species inhabits an island, kind of like the dodo or a cassowary or something, and they're vital to the island. And, like, maybe they do what the cassowaries do, and they eat fruit all over the ground and then poop out the seeds, and they keep the jungle going, right? Let's say that bird species goes extinct. And now that entire ecosystem loses out on, for one, a pretty substantial portion of the food chain, but on top of that, one of its biggest seed planters and seed spreaders in its ecosystem. This could lead to the death of the entire ecosystem, maybe a slow death or a quick one, it's hard to say. Theoretically, this tech could be used to genetically modify a perfect organism for that environment. Perfectly suited to the weather, perfectly suited to the ecosystem and the environment, and more specifically, created to have a temperament and diet and behavior perfectly suited to filling the vacuum left in that ecosystem. Or it could be used in response to man-made disasters. For an example, we've tried this before, but with pre-existing species that we just said, oh, well, it works to do this thing on the other side of the world. Let's ship it in here and see if it works like this. Hydrilla, I think it's called, is this invasive water plant that's filled a lot of the springs in Florida. And it's an invasive plant. It's choking out all of like the natural seagrasses and stuff that are supposed to be growing in the Florida rivers and springs. And it was brought in, and I think carp were introduced to the rivers to try and eat all of the hydrilla, because that's something that carp eat. But the hydrilla grows so fast because carp are all that eat it that the carp just end up having a buffet to mass produce, and now the rivers are just full of carp and hydrilla. And so the theory, like, maybe we could make some new organism that dies in like a year, you know, just it doesn't reproduce or something, or maybe it can only reproduce over the course of one generation, so it's super controlled, and all they eat is hydrilla, or all they eat is carp, you know? Theoretically, this tech allows us to make specialized organisms that can act as a cleanup crew to help fix ecosystems that are fucked up. And that's very exciting as well. But this isn't de-extinction.
Newman from Seinfeld's going to get eaten by a dinosaur.
As we lose species within an ecosystem, if you think of a Jenga puzzle, you're sort of pulling blocks out of there. Those blocks that are creating the instability in the ecosystem is literally the function that animal plays. If we can find ways to restore animals that provide that specific function, we can create more stability within an ecosystem.
So this is the argument that Colossal makes, that they have de-extincted a dire wolf. This is a cogent argument that I just don't think is a good argument to make using the word de-extinction. I think using the word de-extinction is really about marketing in this case. And also it's not about dire wolves, because we're not going to put dire wolves back in an ecosystem that would benefit from them, because that ecosystem died out tens of thousands of years ago. So like very few of the animals that dire wolves would prey on still exist, for example. But the argument that they're making with this de-extinction is that we have these Jenga blocks and we're pulling blocks out. And if you can slide another block in there, then the ecosystem won't collapse, as long as it fills that same niche, as long as it fits into that Jenga block spot.
Yeah.
And it's not just like every block is the same size. There's lots of all.
They're doing a lot of marketing nonsense, but there is some value to the research, or not even some. There is a lot of value to the research that they're doing. They're just kind of overhyping it, and that's where this discourse has come from.
Different sizes of Jenga blocks that are all moving around and all evolving to exist with each other. This is an okay metaphor, actually. Imagine a Jenga tower that's made out of millions of blocks that are constantly moving and responding to each other. And if you take out a big one, there will not be time for the blocks to react to each other, and the ecosystem may collapse. And so you want to slot one in real quick. And in that case, what you could do is you wouldn't have to grab the existing animal that went extinct. You could create an animal that serves that same niche, that is close enough to that blob that you can plop it in there, and then the ecosystem will.
You guys want to know what species I'm the most excited to see hopefully get brought back? Quote unquote. Like, if they can maybe like do this more or less to rewild some new species to fill the niche of this animal. Many of you will know the North Pole has polar bears. The South Pole has penguins. That wasn't always the case, though. The South Pole's never had polar bears, but the North Pole kinda had penguins. And, like, recently, like, up until the 1800s, maybe? I think, like, the really early 1800s is when the last of them were killed. They were called great auks. Great AWKS. You can look them up online. Was it AUKS? Maybe it was AUKS, my bad. They're pretty big. Like, they were, like, waist height, I want to say. Like, as big as, like, an emperor penguin, I believe. Like, pretty large. And they, if you saw one, you'd be like, what the fuck? That's a penguin. And they acted like penguins. They, like, huddled up together on the edge of, like, ice. And they would jump into the water. And they inhabited the North Atlantic and Arctic Ocean. And all around the Arctic. Like, if there's proof of that, it should be viral news. Wait, what's up? Who is that directed at? According to Colossal, they cloned red wolves and give them buffs to save the red wolves from genetic bottleneck. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that they're doing that's going to be way more valuable, but I think they got to do marketing stuff like this because otherwise no one would care. Because, like, saving species from genetic bottlenecks, like, for example, what they did with red wolves was, like, preventing a certain, like, genetic variant from going extinct because they can just, like, they can change that to be, like, within a species, they can absolutely prevent extinction of certain, like, genetic variants of a species, right? Like, that's easy for them, for sure. But that's not going to be as catchy. It's not going to be as marketable, I guess. I don't know if you guys know this. Here's why it's more serious than just, oh, well, people are going a little overboard with this news, getting a little too excited. Trump and his administration, and Elon as well, are now trying to use this news to claim that because we can supposedly de-extinct any animal species that goes extinct, we don't need to do any eco-friendly policy now. And we can let climate change do its thing because now science can bring back anything that goes extinct. Pretty much implying that the only value any species of animal has in existing is if, like, a few of them are still around in a zoo for us to see. So they're not technically gone. You can still pay money to go see them. I guess to Trump, that's all that matters. I don't know.
Recover. And that's why they're making the case that these wolves are a de-extinction, because theoretically they might be direwolf shaped enough that they would slot into the direwolf shaped hole left behind by the actual direwolves that went extinct. Now, I am going to explain why these aren't direwolves. I can't just say that. I know that. It's just that we haven't reached that point in the video yet. Now, I wouldn't say that slotting in a different species into a niche is de-extinction. I do understand how it could be a functional good in ecosystem ecology, but it also sounds very hard. And also, all the other Jenga blocks around it are going to react differently to that block that you just slotted in than they would to the original species. And you will not in that case have made extinction a thing of the past. That extinction will still have happened. I think that 50, 100 years from now, there's going to be a lot more habitat available on this earth for wilderness. And I think that these conversations probably will have had value at that point because there will be ecosystem engineering going on. And part of that is going to be genetic modification and species engineering and synthetic species. And we're having those conversations now because we're going to have to figure it out then.
So basically what Colossal Biogenics, I think is what the company's name is, can do, that's a super valuable bit of work, but isn't super glamorous, is preventing species from going extinct due to inbreeding, basically. Like, let's say you've got 14 of a certain species left, and that's it. That might not be enough to breed a stable population back into existence with enough genetic diversity for it to be a viable in the future. With this research and with this technology, what they do, or what they can do and have done, is force genetic diversity onto the offspring of a certain species, so that they can basically cheat the outcome as if there was a broader range in genes between the parents of certain species. So, for example, you've only got 14 of this species left, and the babies are super inbred, well, they can literally edit the genes to make the babies not be inbred. And of course, from there, if you can just add that genetic diversity to the pool, the job starts doing its own work eventually. You know, like you just start to exponentially have enough genetic diversity in the population that you don't need to intervene anymore eventually. That's where a lot of their research is going to be extremely valuable, is in preventing currently existing species from going extinct, because there's just not enough of them left to breed back into healthy population. Rodgalt was talking about this in YouTube chat as well.
And we're going to be fighting about it the whole time, I promise you. So in this section of the video, we're going to talk about wolves in Yellowstone National Park. And I think that this is weird because it makes you think that the genetically modified wolves that they have created are going
this
to be
is a good analogy,
like this, but they aren't going to be.
Or not an analogy, an example.
In the wild, because the niche that they would have filled in the former Pleistocene Americas does not exist anymore. You would not want dire wolves walking around in the wild because there's no food for them. But the utility here, there is utility here. One is potential economic utility of having a little theme park. But number two is proof of concept for technologies. And we're going to get to those technologies, but this has nothing to do with that because we're talking about wolves, but these wolves are not going to be reintroduced to the wild, and there is no niche for them because all the food that they ate is extinct. It has been for thousands of years.
We thought if we could use it as an opportunity where we can also develop technologies that can help wolves, we thought it was the right first project given how important wolves are to ecosystems.
Now you can make the case that it's important to do this with wolves because wolves are important to ecosystems, and there are other wolves that are weirdly not mentioned in this video that can potentially benefit from some of the research being done here, and are. Like, it's weird that this isn't mentioned in this video, but Colossal has also cloned red wolf coyote hybrids with the intent of having a species to fill that niche in America, in the United States, in places where there were once red wolves and there no longer are.
Okay, this is gonna sound like a crazy stun lock. Am I the only one that's not even slightly afraid of wild wolves? Like, I love dogs so much that, like, I feel like if I see a wild wolf, I'm gonna try to pet it. I'm already scared shitless of bears. You guys won't even believe me if I tell you I chased a black bear once, but it's true. It was a little guy, but it was scared shitless of me, and it ran. Very much like you are of bears. Most wolves just stay away from humans anyway. Most animals in general don't like it when you chase them, all excited to try and touch them. They tend to run away, even little bears. As it turns out. They don't like it when humans want to touch them. Especially if they're like a predator. For some reasons, if a predator sees you, like, arms stretched out trying to touch it, it's like, what the fuck are you? Your aura! And they run. My guy, do you know how big an actual wolf is? I want to know how big an actual wolf is because I want to be up close, rubbing its belly, and feeding it treats. I want to know the answer to that question, Random Gremlin. And if a wolf kills me, I would be damn lucky. Because wolves are doggos. I would rather be killed by a wolf than a person. Come on. Like, that's basic math. I wonder why men have shorter lifespans. Because I want to pet the fluffy creature. Listen, women want to pet wolves too. It's just they don't have the bravery to go and actually do it, all right? We men, we see a cute, fluffy, dangerous animal, and we go and pet it. And then we get killed. And then you see the lifespan stats, and we wonder. I'm more scared of deer than wolves, TBH. But, like, my logic with, like, a wild wolf is I feel like a wild wolf has to be about as chill as a coyote, right? Like, coyotes are the most, like, goblin mode wild canine you'll ever see. And every time I've encountered coyotes, they're pretty chill. Never been chased down or attacked by a coyote before. They either run away or they'll, like, let me follow them. Like, they'll let me just kind of, like, they'll be like, hey, can you stop following me? Can you stop? Can you stop? Can you stop? And eventually they'll just kind of, like, saunter away if you keep following them. But, like, coyotes, at least the ones that I've encountered, are not mean. They're just kind of skittish. You know, and I imagine, like, coyotes, they are more goblin mode than wolves. So wolves would just be, like, they'd just be a vibe. Zan, they're trying to ambush you? No. Coyotes don't do that. And not, like, in the middle of, like, a city. No. No, they're not, they're just kind of, like, scavenging for people's trash and whatnot. These are city coyotes in Palm Springs. I know how big wolves are. My uncle had a very much, like, wolf-leaning wolf dog hybrid, and she was very big and very strong, and also very sweet, and very regularly would basically just kind of nibble on my arm. Like I would just kind of, like, I was like maybe 10 years old, maybe 8, and I would just take my arm, and I would just let her just, like, put my whole forearm in her mouth like a big ass bone, and she would very gently gnaw on it, and I'd be like, hey mom, look, and my whole arm is like in this wolf's jaws, this wolf dog's jaws. Like, if she wanted, I'm sure she could have just gone chomp, and you just hear of the bones breaking, and my mom would be like, Alex, take your arm out of the wolf's mouth. Like, oh god. But no, she never once hurt me. Not even once. She was the sweet, well, not intentionally. She would get so excited to see me, she would jump up and try to go for, like, a big hug, like literally wrap her arms around me for a hug. And when I was a little kid, it would knock me on my ass, and I would get mad. I'd be like, I hate her. I hate Luna. She hurt me. I don't like her anymore. Why did she do that? I was like a little kid. And I get super mad that she jumped up so excited to see me and trying to hug me that I get knocked on my ass. And eventually I got old enough that, like, I knew what to expect, and I was strong enough that I wouldn't get knocked down by her jumping on me. So I'd be like, I'm here! And I'd get, like, squat down, and I'd put my arms out and prepare to get, like, tackled by a wolf, and I'd give her a hug. It's like, I'm not afraid of wolves. I should be, probably, but I really hope that if I ever encounter wild wolves, they're friendly. My dream is to encounter wild wolves and to get them to let me pet them. Because I love doggos, guys. I'm the ultimate doggo lover. I need to find these dire wolves, and I need to make them my friends. That's the true essence of this segment. That is the main point that I came here to express to you all today. And, like, by the way, if you're wondering, like, okay, how widespread is the belief that these are real dire wolves, though? When this news broke, people were being so, arguably, I would say, irresponsible-ish in their reporting. Like, here's Philip DeFranco's post about the direwolf story when this first came out.
Have revived the direwolf through a process called de-extinction. And yes, one, I'm being 100% serious, and two, yes, direwolves are actually real and not something that Game of Thrones made up. Right? This move is actually massive because it marks the first ever successful case of de-extinction, at least according to Colossal Biosciences, which is the company behind this feat. Right? Since its founding in 2021, Colossal has been working to de-extinct a number of animals, including woolly mammoths and the dodo. And to do this, they analyze the DNA of these ancient critters to identify the key mutations that make them different from living relatives. And from there, they then engineer the DNA of the living descendants using the genes they identify to produce an animal that isn't genetically identical to the extinct species, but identical in the ways that matter. Right? And so in this case, Colossal retrieved DNA from the fossils of dire wolves and identified 20 edits that they needed to make to the genetic code of gray wolves to give them key characteristics of dire wolves. And then they made those edits to gray wolf cells, created embryos from the edited cells, and implanted them in surrogate dog mothers. With them then mixing all of that together, and what do you get? 3 healthy, painfully adorable wolf pups. 2 boys who were 6 months old named Romulus.
So, like, he correctly explains the situation and the process, but still falsely reports it as de-extincting dire wolves, because most people don't understand genetic modification. Most people don't understand species classification. Like, this company is doing one of two things. It's one of these two things that this company is doing. Either they're doing very good, valuable work, and they're having to fluff themselves up and appeal to the somewhat layperson masses by creating, some truth-stretching, headline-breaking stories in order to gain some notoriety and public support for what they're doing that is genuinely valuable, but not super glamorous work. So they're just trying to PR their way into more public support for the work they're doing that is genuinely valuable. Or B, there's some tech bro genetic cloning company that's doing tech and research that's already well tread, more or less, and they're essentially trying to ride a hype wave in order to increase their market value or something. It's either a super cynical ploy for easy virality or a desperate strategic move to get eyes on a valuable line of research that isn't necessarily glamorous enough to merit its own virality, if that makes sense.
And Remus for the mythical founders of Rome who were raised by a wolf, and then a 2-month-old girl named Khaleesi, right, for Daenerys Targaryen, who technically was the mother of dragons, but, you know, whatever. And these pups, you know...
For those who don't know, most people are freaking out about this, and I think a lot of the virality bait of this is that direwolves, while being real, are also a creature pretty prominent in the Game of Thrones universe. They're basically nearly extinct in Game of Thrones, funnily enough. And so when a few direwolf puppies are found at the start of the show, it's like a really big deal. Right? So a lot of people who watched one of the most famous shows ever made know about direwolves, think of them as like a fantasy creature, or at most they maybe know that they were a real thing that's extinct. And so hearing that they brought back direwolves, those cool-ass giant wolves like Ghost from Game of Thrones, that was always going to go super viral.
They do share some key traits with the direwolves of yore, which were known for their white coats and also for absolutely being massive, right? Nearly 25% bigger than gray wolves with huge jaws and teeth. And these Colossus wolves, they do indeed have white fur, which isn't found among gray wolves, as well as unusually bushy tails and mane-like hair around their necks. And this is, researchers say, that they currently appear to be about 20% bigger than gray wolves their age, with larger shoulders, teeth, and jaws, among other traits. But for now, the scientists say they'll continue to study the 3 pups in captivity. And while, you know, your dream of owning a direwolf doesn't seem like it's gonna be happening anytime soon for you, this is a serious breakthrough for Colossus.
Dude, you can't even, like, after a certain percentage, you can't even own a wolf dog legally.
Breakthrough that not only could help advance the company's de-extinction efforts, but also potentially help conserve endangered species that haven't gone extinct yet. But follow to stay in the loop.
Yeah, that last bit is what they actually do and what their company is actually, like, focused on. And I think they are doing valuable, good work that just isn't glamorous enough to merit big, viral, headline-breaking stories. So they fudged the narrative on this and really stretched the truth so they could get a bunch of public support so that when they do their future work or their current work that they're also doing that is very valuable but isn't super exciting, you know, they're just increasing genetic diversity and dying populations of species to prevent their extinction. Like, that's good work, but it's not as a big deal as we brought back the direwolf, right? Yeah, to attract investors, yeah. The investors don't care enough about science or know enough about it to know the difference between this and actually bringing back direwolves. So hopefully this genuinely valuable research gets the support that it deserves, even if this story is a little bit and hopefully we don't see the right successfully use this story to push the idea that we do not need to make any effort to prevent mass extinctions of species because, well, we could just bring them right back, right? Because Elon and Trump have been doing that. Make no mistake. They will. They have been. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this segment, if you found it entertaining, educational, or enjoyable in any way, please consider leaving a like, a comment, or perhaps doing both. Doing either of those things, or both, basically forces YouTube to push my content in the algorithm. It really does help a lot, so thank you to everybody who does it, whether you're watching this while I'm live or after the fact when it goes up on YouTube. And of course, if you want to see more from me on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload new videos. And make sure you also follow my social medias, linked down below in the description. Especially make sure you join my fan Discord. Probably not tonight. I'm going to host a watch party there tomorrow, but usually every Friday I host gaming events, call-in streams, watch parties, and movie nights. I also announce all my new uploads and streams there, so if you don't want to miss anything, make sure you join the Discord. Finally, if you want to support the channel directly, you can afford it and you feel like it, you want to just drop a little coin to your streamer, consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buy some custom Xander Hall merch through the Streamlabs link down below in the description. Regardless of how you support me though, thank you so much for watching, as always, and have a good one.